Okay, good morning. We are going to do the final stages here of this painting, which in ways is similar to our brick painting, some similar techniques. You have done your white to gray, right? An even transition from a light, a medium, and a darker on your mortar. You're probably making corrections as I am making this video so that your final project turns out the way you would like it to, in the way that it can be. So today we're going to do a series of washes, and that means we're not going to use just paint. We're going to use paint and water, diluted the paint a little bit, and do washes that we can see right through. And you don't have to have exactly the same colors I have, but we're going to do 3 warms and then 2 cools and a black. So I have a lighter yellow. My yellow is lemon yellow. Then I have a kind of a medium toned yellow, and I have a yellow ochre. And then I have kind of a red. My red is crimson. So kind of a yellow, a medium yellow, almost orange. Doesn't need to be bright orange. Then a red. Then I have a darker blue. My blue is Phthalo Blue. And then I have burnt umber, which is a brown, kind of a medium warm. It's actually kind of a warm brown, even though I'm putting it down here with the cools. And then I'm going to use a little black at the end, I believe. So this is a series of washes, and it's important that you let each stage dry completely before you do the next stage. Because as you overlap these colors, you're going to be making a variety of colors. If you put them on while they're both wet, it's going to blend together, and it's all going to start to become the same color, and it's not going to look very good. So as you do each circle individually, by the time you get done with the last one, the first one's probably going to be close to ready for the first color. So we're going to go from light to dark. Okay, we're always working light to dark. So I'm going to put these other colors over here. I'm going to leave my yellow. I have a little plastic palette that kind of looks, if you look at it, it kind of looks like what we have here, right? There it is upside down. So it's similar to what we have here, except there's no gray background, right? We have these circles, and the light on here is coming. There's the lightest side to the grayest side. That's how the light's working over here. There is a window over here to my left, and that's where the light, the primary light's coming from. Okay, so I am going to use a very little of this yellow, just a little bit. Doesn't want to come out of my tube. There. Then most of you have been probably dipping your brush and adding water to it, which is fine, it works. Today I have this and it's convenient. I have a little plunger. I'm going to put some water in it. Just makes it a little easier for me. I'm also using a round brush today. I might continue. In fact, I might use this different round brush over here. I'm going to use this one, I think. You could use a flat brush. I'm going to use the round brush, just it puts a little softer edge down. But a flat brush will work. And I might switch in between the two so you can see. But I'm going to add some water to this. And I'm going to try to mix it up gently, but thoroughly. It's kind of a lot of water, isn't it? So it's going to take me a while to mix this in well, because we don't want solid paint, we want a wash. Okay. And you can do this in whatever container, small container that you have. If you get eggs in the clear plastic container, those containers work really well to hold little small amounts of paint. Now I think I might have added too much water here. We'll find out when I put it on my paper. I think I got a little carried away with the water, but let me mix it some more just to find out. Okay, this is probably going to go out of your view. So we're going to start in the light area, and this is okay. You can see it's a very fine wash. Okay, I'm going to actually leave some of the white showing and give a wash to this circle in this yellow. Well, I think this yellow is going to be fine. It's very light. We can see right through it. Okay, we're just adding a little color. Okay, again, I'm leaving some of the white showing. I'm going to do this next one. It's very thin. You can see right through it. If it's too thin, you'll notice that the color starts going away, and you don't really want that. And seeing the texture of the paper is just fine. You'll see with the round brush, if you start out to the side, it's easy to move to the edge. You know, you can do that with a straight brush too, a flat brush, if you just keep the edge straight. Again, I'm letting some of the white remain. Okay, so it goes pretty quickly. You want to start in the middle. That's not a bad place to start, and move it towards the white and into the gray. You can even let some of the gray remain untouched in these darker areas. That's okay. And if you have your rag, let's see, I don't know what I've done with mine. Here we go. So if you were to, go too far and get some yellow where you didn't want it, you can just easily take that rag and kind of wipe it right off. It'll come right off the paper. That's why we're using acrylic, because when it dries, if it's decent paint and not too thin, when you get it wet again, it won't come up. So when you get paint where you don't want it, it's easy to take it off and not mess up the bottom of it. So I am just going to start hitting all of these circles. Notice how my brush strokes are kind of going circular with the circular fashion of this kind of sphere we have going on here. Okay. So make up enough of each color so you do have enough to coat all your circles. And that's why the white is very important in each of your base coats, so that you have a good contrast and that you can make these other colors light as well with the white in place. Okay, so I'm just going to continue to do all these circles, even the little ones. If you have a round brush like this one, it makes the little ones a little easier because you can use just the tip. It doesn't take much at all to do these little tiny ones. You can use just this tip. Again, make sure some of the white shows through completely. It can be a little different for each one. So again, this is a wash, W-A-S-H. It's translucent, you can see through it. It's not a lot of paint, mostly water. And if your hand starts getting in the way of what you've just done, you can easily just turn your paper. But remember that you're focusing again from light to dark, so keep some of the white there. Paint into the gray. You can leave some of the gray showing as well, and you want to leave some of that white showing. If you follow this process, it'll look quite nice when you are finished. This is a similar process to the bricks. If you remember at the end of the brick project, you can't see my color here. There's a really big glare on the screen, but there is color. It looks like the rest of my painting over here. We've got better light. But if you remember at the end of the brick painting, when you went in and you touched up individual bricks, some of you did, with washes of color, you could have even used bolder color, these washes, to give them kind of an individual style. They stand out a little bit. And you'll notice that in some brick walls, some of the bricks are almost blue, while others are almost dark red. And then sometimes they just all look the same. Okay. And you start in the middle, it's easier to spread to other areas. You shouldn't think about this too much. Just follow the basic kind of guidelines, the basic rule here. Leave some of the white showing. Try to paint a fairly even texture. The texture of the paper is going to help for this project. It really actually lets things work out really well, because then you get all sorts of different tones. You get yellow gray, yellow light gray, yellow white, and then we're leaving some of that white show, of course. So it's kind of organic and random, but with a specific idea in mind, to keep this gradation from light to dark going. So if you have a round brush like mine, you can use it. It works well. It avoids any harsh edges. Not that these are going to be harsh edges because the paint is so thin, but you can use, let me see if I can find a smaller flat. You can certainly use a flat brush. The round brushes also, they hold more paint. Look at the difference. So that's just going to hold more paint. You won't have to dip your paint brushes often, but the flat brush works just as well. But I already have to maybe go get more paint, where with the round brush I could just keep going. But this isn't bad, actually. See, it works. Just depends on what you like to use. They'll do the same job. For getting into the edges, I find the tip of the round brush is really nice, because you can get nice and close if you need to. So, clean that out, because I'm not going to continue to use it. I'll continue to use the round one. So I'm just going to go in and touch with just a little color. And if your edges aren't real neat at the end of your circle, as you put these layers on, you can kind of straighten those edges out a little bit by moving the paint into the edges. Even mine, you can see some of my pencil marks still, and that's perfectly fine. You want to avoid going way over them. And they're all starting to look like little spheres. They will. These will look like little spheres sticking out of the mortar when we're done. Okay, I think time for a little more paint for me. And again, notice how all the light on here is the same direction. The light is on the same side of each circle. Most of you did really well with that. It's not necessarily bad if it comes from slightly different directions, because in life you might have bright sunshine over here, and then you might have a gap in a building where some other light's coming through, And it might be in slightly different areas if you have two different light sources. But so you get the idea of a light source. We try to do it from one side so that we understand the light source. Again, notice how light this yellow is. It's not very dark at all, and it shouldn't be, because you're going to put several other washes, and it's slowly going to get darker, and it's going to have more depth. So where your bricks looked flat on the surface, these will look more rounded. And again, these are, even though we're working on a small scale, these are techniques that we use in scenic painting with the largest brushes, or larger brushes. Let's see, I think I've got some yellow on every one here. Okay, maybe this one over here needs some. Yeah, let me look at it in the monitor. Yeah, I think that's okay. And you're starting to see a little more depth, a little more roundness to this. And even, because we're not trying to make this look like a marble, like a very smooth ball. You could do that. It takes more time and more technique. But we're getting texture, you know, what appears to be texture. Obviously, this is a flat piece of paper. But what appears to be texture underneath. Okay, that's because of when you go from white to gray, it's not completely smooth. But also because when we put this wash on it, it will be darker in some areas and lighter in others because it is a wash and we're applying it randomly and a little unevenly, and that's intentional. Okay. I'm going to try to let this dry here. I don't know if I'll have to stop the camera or not, but you need these to be very dry when you're done. Now, otherwise, when you put the next color on, it'll just mix and make another color. You don't want that. The colors that you want to appear are when you layer one color. It would be like putting a piece of colored plastic down, you know, like some of that plastic for gift wrapping, or maybe you get some kind of food wrapped in a colored clear plastic wrap. Then you put another color over that, and it makes another shade or hue of that color. That's kind of what we're doing, putting layers. So I'm going to carefully mix my orange up. So I just used that, what do I have here? Lemon yellow. It can be a light yellow, but that's a light yellow, right? Everyone's going to have slightly different colors. This is kind of a standard color. Most of you will probably have this, I think. Yellow ochre. It's darker. It's got more red to it. It's almost an orange. I'm going to put just a little bit of water in there. I think that's well, yeah, maybe that's enough. I'll try a stick this time. I don't know if this will do any better. Yeah, I like the stick. The stick seems to work okay. But I'm really going to mix it up. Okay, I hope that'll be enough. Okay, and just to remind you, while I'm painting, I'm doing my painting, I have a fan over here on my right, so there's some air blowing over this. I'm trying to help it dry quicker for the demonstration. And you can see this particular circle that I have my finger on. It doesn't look as yellow as these others. It actually is. We're having the camera issue again, and I realize that when I'm looking at your work online. I know it looks a little different than what the picture says. So again, the higher quality the photo you can take, the better. Okay. I'm going to see what happens. What I don't want is I don't want the yellow to start coming off the page. Okay, I don't want it to come up. I want this coat to be over it. So you don't have to press very hard, and you can move quickly. Let me start on this little one just to see how my yellow ochre paint is. And again, you don't try to cover all the white, and you don't have to go over exactly where the yellow was, the light yellow. You can skip areas, and you're just giving it another tone. Look how quickly I'm moving, and how I'm not touching the entire circle. I like this. I think this yellow will work. Let me try a bigger one. I think that one's maybe drier. Again, I'm letting some of the yellow show on the edges. I'm overlapping some of the yellow. So I'm not covering all that first coat. Okay, I'm moving lightly and quickly. And you can see I'm leaving some spaces. Okay, I might go up into here with some, and maybe even on the edge there. It's going to be eventually a little harder to tell which ones you've painted. The next coat will be obvious because it's more red. So if this is just blending into the yellow and the yellow is coming up off the paper, then it's not dry enough. Okay, so I'm kind of putting this down quite quickly, letting some of the edges of the yellow show, and not letting some of the gray in the yellow show. Okay. And if you're thinking it sort of looks like the moon again, it does. It kind of looks like a texture of the planet, right? Or the planet, the moon. I might have to mix some more. It looks like I might run out. Again, I'm letting some of the yellow show on the edges. I'm touching some of the white where the yellow is not. I might turn my fan up. That might help me let this dry. Now this one's much darker because we don't see the top of the circle, right? The light part would be up here out of the picture. When you put this on, the paint will look lighter in some areas and darker in others. That's okay. It'll dry unevenly, and that's desirable for texture. We're trying to get some texture in the tops of these rounded kind of stones, colorful stones. Okay. See also how I'm not necessarily doing brush strokes. I'm kind of dabbing at it and moving to the edge. Not touching everything, letting some of the other colors show. And see how we continue to do layers. The lighter areas are going to get even lighter, and the darker areas, so you don't want to cover up every bit of white. In the end, a little tiny bit of that white will be showing, and you want that. That'll be your highlight, a different way of doing a highlight. rather than adding it, we're kind of subtracting color here and letting some colors show through. So I've been working at this for about 25 minutes now, and I'm only on my second color. So keep in mind how long this will take. You will have extra time to do it. And you can do one color, have a cup of tea, and do another color, you know. Let that dry. It's almost kind of feels nicer if you do it in stages and not all at once. You don't feel rushed, and you can really let each layer dry. I'm going to try to do it quickly for this video with good results for you so you can see a good example. You can see my wet paint here kind of bleeding. Now, as long as it's not getting down into the mortar here, that's fine. That's going to be nice texture in the end. That's going to look good, okay? Now, you don't want it all to bleed everywhere, but part of that is the texture of the paper, which really helps the project like this. Now, I'm just really trying to keep my eye open. I think I've got a little bit of orange in every one. I might do this only so it dries faster. I'm just going to push on that a little bit. Push on this a little bit. Maybe turn up my fan in just a second. Okay, that was just about the right amount of orange. Or, actually I had yellow ochre. Yellow ochre. A little bit darker than orange. Okay. All right, so we've got 2 color washes on so far. I'm going to set this over here closer to the fan. I'm going to rinse my brush, clean it. I have a red, a nice crimson red. So this one's going to be much darker, so we want to be careful with how much of this we add. We don't want to turn everything red. We just want a light layer of red. I'm going to put a little water in there. And I'm going to stir that up again. Maybe a little bit more water. Okay, there's my red up there. I'm going to wipe that off. Let me check this paper. I'm going to try to be very careful and not keep my brush in any one place too long. I don't want to pull this other paint up. You can let this dry longer. Okay, this was pretty quick. It's still a little damp, but you can let it dry longer. Have it near a fan. Put it in front of a fan. Okay, we did the yellow and we did an orange. Now when I do the red, I'm not going to go up as far. I'm actually going to start moving towards this darker side, right? So the red doesn't cover as much as the yellow or orange. And I'm also going to start, I don't know what this is going to look like because I haven't put it on any paper yet. We're about to find out if I like this color. Okay, I'm going to start down here. I'm not sure yet. Let me cover this and see what I think. Part of it is I think my other colors are coming up. I'm not sure I like how this is covering. It's a little weird. I think it's because my paint is still a little wet. If you play with it too much, you can see how it starts to stay one color, but I do really like the texture that my paint is forming here. I don't mind that at all. I want to get a little bit of water here, just water, and see if I can soften it here where it meets the orange and yellow. Notice how I put a little red where some of the white is. Okay, I'm still leaving white. Okay. I don't mind this too much. I think it's a little, we'll see how it dries. So it's lighter here on this side. Okay. It's a little odd because we're getting a texture, which I actually like. And part of it's because this isn't completely dry. Let me try a small one. And let me add just a little more water to my paint, just a couple drops really, to see if I can make this go on. I'm mixing it up a little bit more too. I think maybe I needed to mix it more. It's going on a little weird. Yeah, I don't know if it's the paint. Okay, notice how I'm keeping it down low here. I think it's too heavy. I'm going to get just some water now. Just water. Okay. So I'm just putting some more water on my paint now. I'm making this a little more subtle. This boldness, it won't be this bold when it dries. You can see this one's drying rather nicely. Okay. Okay. And the texture from the paper is really showing, and I actually kind of like that a lot. I like that texture. You can make that work for you. What I haven't done here so much, I'm going to start doing, is leaving some of these areas untouched. So I've just got a little bit more subtle color on my brush now, not as much as before. Going up into these, not covering all the yellow, not coloring all the yellow ochre. If you feel like it's getting too harsh, like I feel like in here, what I can do is simply take a brush that's just a little bit damp, and I can go in and soften some of that up if I feel that it's too heavy. Okay, and on this one I've left a little more of the yellow and yellow ochre showing through. So my brush is getting used to this mixture of paint that I've made. I'm getting used to the mixture of paint that I've made. I think I'm going to have to let this dry a little longer than the others. Okay, let me see if I do this one quickly, what happens if this one's mostly dark. Yeah, I think if I just use more of my brush there, that works nicely on that one. I can do a similar thing here, use more of my brush. Yeah, this particular color seems to stay on top of the surface more than the first two did. That's okay, we can work with that. See what it's doing and adjust. Okay, I'm letting some of this other color show up here. Although some of this looks and feels random, you're always keeping in mind where the light is and what other colors you're letting show through. Trying to give it some shape as you go. I'm just putting some darker area down here because we have kind of 3 more layers to go. So let me see if I can do these quickly. You don't have to go as quick as I have, or I've done this a lot, so I can do it pretty quickly and understand what it's going to end up looking like. Okay, see where I got red, I didn't want it. I can just take that off. Okay, and I'm going to go soften that in a second too. Remember, I'm letting some of this white still be visible and some of the other colors at the top still be visible. That'll help with the texture and the depth and the light source. Okay, I'm going to rinse this, and I'm just going to go up here with a little water and see about softening some of that up. So this is much more colorful than the brick that we did. And when you do all the colors, you can actually control the entire tint after the whole thing dries if you would like. So I've got some paint here. I didn't really want it there. Let me get that wet. There, it's gone. So yeah, it's doing a little weird things here, but I think it's going to work out just fine for me. Your paint may go on differently, but again, you want to be able to see through it. Okay. This coat is almost not wanting to be on the paper. It's almost wanting to come off the paper. So I'm trying to move it quickly. And I'm going to work some of it up into the white there. Into the yellow. I can work some of it here into the white. Again, you should still be seeing all the colors that are underneath. Okay, you're not covering up these colors. Even if it's subtle, you're seeing the colors underneath the color you're putting on. If it's too wet underneath, that will not work. You'll have to let it dry. Okay, I'm right on the edge here. Mine's a bit wet, but I'm still able to see all the colors underneath. And you can start to see now how I'm getting a brighter area on all these. And again, in the camera, it does look a little darker, but you can see when it dries, these have been drying, they almost look like, it's almost starting to look like Jupiter or Mars. Okay, let me do these bigger ones, I think. Yeah, this red is struggling a bit. It isn't liking, but I think that may be an asset. That might be working in my favor for the texture. The texture is looking pretty good. We're all going to have different kinds of texture based on how our hand moves on the page, based on the brush that we're using. That's fine. So you're just looking for something consistent and to follow these rules of not covering everything up, letting things remain, putting some colors where other colors don't exist at all. And again, I will soften this up a little bit with just some water. I'm going to make that a little more subtle. You can almost see it in the video how my paint is just, it's because of the amount of water. I know this. I understand why. So, and I've got a little bit of eraser dust or something there in my way. Still letting both those yellows show up there in areas. And get some red near the edge at the top. Leaving some of the color down here show through. Okay. And some water, just water. I'm going to soften some of this up. Okay. So let me move through some of these others kind of quickly. Yeah, you can almost see the paint just saying, I don't want to be on the paper. So I'm kind of fighting that a little bit. I'm going to come back to each of these and spread this out. I just want to get a little bit on these quickly. Okay. Okay, I'm going to get some water on my brush. Paint where I don't want it. If you think a whole area is too dark, you can just push the rag on it. You can take up a lot of that paint like that, you see. And then you can put some more back in if you would like. And it may go back on nicer than you had it the first time. So even here, just push. And I can soften that up a little bit. I'm leaving some of that white. That's why having the white is important. You need to leave some of that highlight color. Kind of paint right up to the edge there in areas. As I run out of paint on my brush, I can start doing the tops of some of these where it's not going to be as dark. I'm almost out of paint there. Letting some of the yellows show still, not covering up all those yellows. Okay, I can soften some of these. Let me rinse my brush off. Just clean water here. This time I think I'm going to have to let things dry a little longer. So I'm just going to have to let the camera run here. And let's see what we've got going if we put it full frame here. Okay, not too bad. I'm liking it. Okay, just in an effort to make it dry a little more quickly, I am going to push down on some of these. Just straight down. I'm going to go over here and put this in front of the fan. Sometimes when you do this too, it creates a nice texture and very gently lifting off some of the paint. Of Or sometimes it lifts off more paint than you would like it to, and you can just put more paint back on. But I think I'm going to have to let this dry a little more. I'm going to move it over here to the side. That's drying some more in the fan. Now that I'm switching to the cool colors, I really want to be sure I don't start lifting up the warm colors. So these next few coats will really start to give this some depth. So I'm going to give it some cool blue. This is a Phthalo Blue, and you might have a different colored medium blue, but something a little darker blue. Even if you mix some colors to get that blue, that's fine. I'm going to try to mix this up so it's not too heavy. Let me get the stick again. I'll try that. I may just have to mix this for much longer than I did the red. And sometimes the warmer pigments, they don't cover as well. So like if you were to paint a wall at your house yellow, it's very difficult to do because you can see through the yellow very easily. So that's why we put primer up on the wall, or that we do a base coat on our flat, so that if we're painting something just straight yellow, even a red can become very translucent. Typically they take 2 or more coats just to get a nice solid coverage. You'll notice when this blue goes on, there'll be multiple shades again. We'll have some kind of yellow blue. It'll start to look a little purple because of the red underneath of it. And I say underneath of it because it is a wash. We're able to see through it. And you can take longer for these stages to dry so that it just doesn't become all muddy. So I've been working on this for about 48 minutes now. So that can gauge you. It'll probably take you twice as long to do it as it does me, that's my guess. One, because you want to leave a little more drying time. And I'm able to work quite quickly at things like this. I'm quite used to it. So this is where you could be working on this and something else, or having a cup of tea, or many cups of tea. I'm really going overboard here. I want to try to have this mixed really, really well. It's just really thin, right? It's a thin wash. You'll know if it's too thin because when it starts to dry, there'll be very little color left. You still want to see color. You know, there's still color there. I don't know if that's going to focus. Maybe if I put this stick here. There's still color there, but you can see right through it. It's translucent. This might be on the heavy side. I can control that a little bit with how much water I put on my brush. So you're trying not to stay in one area too long, because then all the paint will just start coming up if it's not dry enough. Okay, I think that's the brush. Let's see how dry I am over here. It's getting there. You can see the texture in my paper. And then our nice spatter texture that you have there. You can even see some yellow down here that bled over. That's going to be okay, because again, we're going to do a shadow down there later. Okay, so let me see. A little nervous. Let me see how this goes on. This is very, very blue. I am noticing that. So I think I have a little water here. And on the darker color, I'm not going to start up here because I don't want it too dark. I'm going to gently start near the bottom. This is quite blue, so I'm going to start near my bottom. Let me start on a couple of them. I can still see the colors underneath. When I paint this on, they are still visible to me. But it is quite blue. That's okay, we can control that. You don't want it to dry too long because you don't want that hard line right there, right? You do not want that hard line. Let me do this little one over here. Okay, then I'm going to get some more water, just water on my brush, and start to move that blue up. That's working very nicely for me, very nicely. Notice how I'm letting all the other colors show. I'm letting some of the red, I'm letting some of the yellow show, and I'm working quickly here because we don't want that line, that hard line, to dry. Okay. I'm not going, I'm covering some of the red, letting some of the red show. I'm covering some of the yellow, letting some of the yellow show. And I can even go up top and get some of these very top edges with a little blue. Okay, and again, this will dry a little differently. You'll see here shortly. And I have very little blue on this, just a little bit of blue. Okay, so that's starting to transform for me, and I like it. Another way, you could get just a little bit of water on your brush, just a little bit, and put it down here. It's not heavy at all. It's just getting that a little bit wet, just a little bit. And then get some of your blue. Don't go to the edge because it might bleed off the edge. But then I'll work it up. And I'll work it to the edge here very quickly. You don't want to spend too much time in one area. Notice how I haven't gotten any more color. I'm just using the color that's on the paper. Okay, I can work it up. I'm not getting any more paint. I'm letting it get thinner and thinner and thinner. And I'm not following any other color. Okay, this is its own color. So I'm not following an edge of the yellow or the red or the orangish color. I'm letting some of all of that show. Okay. When this dries, it'll become more clear here what I've done. I'm fairly happy with that. I might darken this edge just a little bit. Okay. So let me go down here. Ooh, lots of blue, right? Lots of blue. Going into the white some, going into the yellow and the orange a little bit. Going this edge, making that edge darker. Getting just some water. I'm paying attention because I want all those other colors to show up above as well. So I still have white, I still have orange, I still have yellow, I still have red color. Right? Okay, and you can see how these are drying now more evenly. I'll hold them up close later. So I'm going to do this quickly, I think. Go through these. Again, you should be able to see through this color. It looks very, very dark on the computer monitor, but when I'm putting this down, I can see all my other colors underneath of it. This is just I dipped into the water again. That's all I did here. Dipped into the water, and I'm bringing some of this color up to the top. It's even thinner, so I can see through it more. I can even go up here to the edge a little bit. Okay. It feels random, but you're paying attention to all the other colors. Okay. I think this is going on a little bit better than the red. My red was kind of funny. So there's a lot of paint on this circle, so I can take some of this paint as I'm working and move it to another circle. Remember, you gotta keep thinking that you're painting in layers, and every layer you can see through, and you can see the layer below. Okay? It's more obvious in front of your eyes than it is on this camera. But I can see every color when I put this, even though this blue is dark, I can see every color below it. Okay, I can still use some of this color here on other circles. And you can see here it's bleeding a little, which is fine. I'll use some of that over here. So just keep the technique in mind as you're doing it. Layers of color, layers of color. And you will notice when I'm not talking, I can actually do this quite quickly. This is rather harsh here, so I'm going to get some water and soften that. So that's quite heavy, so I'll use this blue in other areas, working very quickly. If I'm working in more than one area, I have to work quickly so it does not dry, so I don't get those heavy lines, like that heavy line. We'll get rid of that in just a second. Okay, I think we'll get rid of that now. So some more water. See, I almost waited too long, but this will work just fine. Again, you can see all those colors through here, which is really nice. I didn't get any more paint. I'm just using the blue that was on my paint brush, that was on my paintbrush in other areas. I can always go back and add more if I want. It's better to have to add more than to have put on too much. You can always soften it with your towel, your rag. Push straight down on it, that's all. There, soften that area up. See this little curve here? I almost don't mind it because it's starting to give a little shape to the top of that. You don't want to do that on every single one, but they're all slightly different. I think I might even be able to see, I can even soften that if I want with some water. If I think it's too hard, too heavy, even here I can soften these edges. Okay, keep that in mind. Ooh, very, very blue, very blue. Okay. I'm gonna have to work extra fast here. Put some more on this one. Okay, working extra fast. Again, you do not want to make all one color. If your paint is too wet underneath, this is all going to turn one color and you're not going to be happy about it at all. I am working rather quickly. You should let it dry so it's really nice and dry before you do your next layer, or it will all turn one color and it won't look good. So these are almost like we have marbles embedded in the ground and the sun is hitting them. With one primary light source for this particular painting coming from this direction, so we still have some light hitting the tops of these from down low. If it was up high, the light might be right here, right? So let me soften some of these up. Maybe you would like to see too. Let me get that in the camera. Okay. Let me do some of these down here. Very, very tiny. I've got to be a little more careful. I don't think I have any on this one. If you missed one, it's not going to be a bad thing necessarily. It'll just look slightly different than the others. That's okay. So these small areas where you don't get will actually look okay. But you want to try to hit them each so you get some good depth and color to all of them. These are very small. What's this looking like in the camera now? Let me have a look in the camera. Okay, these are still wet quite a bit over here. Okay, let me try to hold this up closer so you can get an idea of what that color is looking like. See the layers, you can see right through those layers of color. Okay, look, even that white there is shining. It's on the very, very edge, but that's okay. Here you can see some of the white. You can definitely see some of the white there, right? Okay. So I think I like where that is, I think. Let me look here. I'm going to put this in front of the fan. Try to let that dry a little bit more. And then I'm going to do I have burnt umber. Okay, I've been working at this for an hour now. I'm not sure about this burnt umber. Let me think about this for a second. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the burnt umber, the darker brown, and I'm going to put a little bit of it in the blue. Okay. Then I'm going to mix that up in the blue. And make that blue just a little bit darker, a little bit warmer in a way because of that brown, but I do want it a little darker. I'm going to have to add more water to this because I just added pure paint to my wash. So that's a brown and the blue now. It's not just the brown. The brown was too red for me. I need something darker and with some cool in it because we're going to be painting on the cool side of these circles. You cannot rush the project. I can go quickly because I'm used to this. So give it the proper amount of time. You know, if you have to do it in 2 or 3 sittings, that might be best. So you can look at it and think about how it's looking and how everything was working for you. This might get a little messy here because I've filled this up quite a bit. I'm just going to continue stirring this. See what we got here. I think I'm liking this. I think this is going to do what I want it to do here. We're about to find out. I'm hoping this is dry enough right now for me to continue. Clean that off. Oh, I've spilled paint. There, let me wipe that up. I might use this flat brush because what we're going to do, if this is the color that I want it to be, if it's dark enough, it's going to be the darkest side. So I want it thin over here. Then I can turn this flat, make it wider, and I can turn this again and make it skinnier and start working the color up into these edges. So I'm going to try the flat brush on this. You just want to make sure that it is darker than what you just put on and provides a nice dark edge. So I'm going to get a little paint here. You see my paint there, right? I'm just trying to get a little bit. I could take it on a piece of paper, you know, I just don't want to ruin my nice background here and see what this looks like. And that's not really that dark. Let's see. Of course, I'm going over just straight gray. So let's see what it does. I think I might want it darker than that. But it might be okay. You can do more than one layer. So I'm going to go skinny, fatter. Well, this is going to be okay. And then skinny. Right? Skinny, wide, skinny. Without adding any more paint, I can just add some darker tones there. Okay, I can even go up here on this very edge, very skinny, get some of that darker tone. Okay, so that actually worked out really well. You can see how it's kind of put a nice shade there, shadow on this far side of this circle. Okay, I think if I play with this too much, I'll take too much of the paint off. So I'm going to try this very systematically and just start here, skinny, turning the brush so it's wide. Being very careful because I want to be just on the edge of the circle. Again, this is that darker blue with some brown in it. Keep moving this out a little bit. No more paint, I'm just moving the brush. Maybe getting up here, very skinny. The little ones will be a little harder to do. Skinny here. Letting the other colors show. Okay, I could get a little more down here if I wanted. Okay. I want to soften that. There, just soften that up a little bit. I can soften it here if I want. Okay. This one's quite dark. It's just hanging over the edge of the paper here. Again, this is quite dark, but I can actually see through it to the other colors. Not as much, but I can see through it. And notice I don't go back over this line here. If I do, it'll just get lighter, right? And I can change the arc of this here to give it a little more dimension, like the light is hitting it differently. So this you're showing the darkest area, and if that's harsh, I can blend it out, or I can try again with the rag, soften that up a little, and I don't mind that little ridge. I don't mind it. It gives a little dimension to that particular round stone. Okay, let me do these big ones first, I think. And soften that up. Took a little paint up there, that's okay. Again, if you think you have too much paint in some areas, you can use it and put it on other circles. And if you put this on thin and wanted to do another thin layer, you could. This is defining the very darkest part of these little circles. So right on the edge. My little circles are getting quite dark already, and yours may too. I'm kind of using a giant brush here at the moment, but keep some highlight and color in each of these and they will read fairly well. Okay. You can also use a much smaller brush on these little tiny ones. I have a smaller brush here, so I could go in and define those edges a little better with my tiny brush. Make those edges clean. Okay, let me look in the camera now, see what I'm coming up with. Okay. Give you a closer look here. Still see where some of my paint is wet. But if I hold it at a tilt, you can actually see now how it looks dimensional. Right? You can see how they almost feel like they're coming off of the paper a little bit if all you see is the paper. Right? They've got some shape to them. Just from these little highlights and then the dark shadow. Right? More so than if you just see it, well, if I curved it this way, might look like that. But you can feel that depth now. Okay, the next, you're familiar with this step, the hard shadows. Use a small brush for this. Okay, it should be brushwork along the edge of these circles, and it's going to be in black. Okay, you know this step. Actually, I might have you do, let me think here for a second, do I want you to do that yet? Let me look at this. I think I might have you do the other shadow first. So, let me re-explore for us all the color we just used. I think it might be too brown, but let me think. Let me see. It might work. The color we just used. Let me try it. So we have this edge. Okay, like on our brick, this would be the dark edge where we have a cut shadow and then a cast shadow. The cast shadow going into this mortar. Okay, this is where you're going to need your smaller brushes. I think I'm going to try it with this flat. I don't know if I have a smaller flat brush in front of me. I don't. It doesn't appear so. Let me look. No, if you have a smaller flat brush, it might work better because you got to get in here around each edge. So it's similar to what we just did with the brown, the same color that was on, right? That was right here on our circle. I'm just getting this wet, so it looks quite dark because it's wet, right? And there is a little paint on that. Okay. Let's see how this color works for us. And in some cases, this shadow is going to run right into the circle below. That's fine, because it would have a shadow. If this circle's bigger and there was a shadow, it would hit this circle below. So what you're going to do, you're going to be on the outside of this line. You're going to start on an edge and make this line wider as it goes out, just translucent, and then skinny as it goes in. Right on the edge. So now we have a shadow from this, and it will hit this because it's taller, it's bigger, and you want to try to keep the shadow line even, so keep one edge of the brush against the line of the circle here. Okay? So you're going to be doing these shadows on every single circle. I would suggest doing the big ones first so you know how much of the little ones you covered. So what you can do is same color wash you just used, that same dark shadow. It won't look as dark because you're going over light, right? So I tend to put some on the palette and get some on my brush. So the flat brush works, but you're going to come on the flat side, you're going to make it wider. It will run into these. That's okay. That's okay. But you can see now how this one has a shadow on this one. Okay, this is where your dimension comes from very nicely, okay? So I'm going to go down the side. It gets wide, and that one's going to end. Down the side, the edge. Okay, remember you won't have it up here. There's no shadow up at the top. The light is hitting the top. The shadow is going to start down here on the side and then get wide here, okay? And you're going to cover up some of these little ones, but that's perfectly normal because the ones next to it are taller. So it's going to get wider here and there, and I want it right against the edge and then skinnier, okay? You might draw circles on another piece of paper if you want to get used to this brush stroke. Okay, so now my hand's going to get in the way. You might have to let some of that dry, but they're all going to go the same direction. I start flat, I follow this circle, and then I get skinny. See how that works? You notice when I go back into it, it kind of gets light right there. That's not super ideal. It's okay. It's not going to hurt anything. But you can see the difference. It almost looks like some light is reflecting from somewhere else. Okay, you only want to do this kind of one time, and you want to be able to see through it. You want to see all that nice spatter work that you have below. So this one will be a big one. Let's see. It's going to start skinny. This one's going to get bigger. I'm missing my circle, but I'll go back and get that in a second. I kind of missed the edge, so let me go do the whole thing again. I'm missing it again. Get my hand a little steady here. There, then get skinny and let that dry. I'm going to wait for this one because this shadow is going to touch other shadows. So I'm going to go over to the big ones. So you can see now, all of a sudden we're getting some very nice depth. This is where it starts getting exciting, right? And you want this very thin. This coat should be very thin. You don't want it too harsh. This, I think, will dry a little less harsh, but when it's soft like this, you want this soft shadow, right? Or if it's dark in this area and becomes soft, that's nice. That's okay. Okay? You don't want to go back and forth and back and forth. You want one smooth motion. Again, there's no shadow over here. The shadow starts on this lower side. So skinny to fat. I'm pushing a little bit more back to skinny. Okay? I'll do this one. You gotta be careful not to get your hand in the shadow you just did. If you turn your paper in another direction, then you need to make sure your shadows are all coming the same way. So look at how this is popping. It's really becoming three-dimensional now. Similar to your brick technique, but because this is round, you've got a little bit more depth to it. Okay, let me see if I can hit this. Again, look very carefully. No shadow here or here. It comes down and around and up. And I'm going to go right over this little one. That is perfectly okay. It should be in a shadow. So down, around, and up. Nice shadow. I'm going to try one more. Down, around, and up. Okay, very nice. I'm getting a good shadow here. This one really isn't going to have a shadow. It's all in the light, this one here. Okay, this one seems like it's missing a little on this edge. I could try to put it back in. It's okay. Okay, you don't want them too dark. They shouldn't look like dark lines, but they should look like soft shadows. Okay, this one isn't going to have hardly anything. Again, all the light is on this one. This one, we're going to run into these others, and that's what we need it to do, so it looks realistic. So down and around and up. If you do it twice, do the whole thing. Okay, I think it's a little wide there. Let me try to wipe some of that off a little bit. Okay. This one, okay, we already have the downside, so let me go around and very carefully up so it gets narrow. No shadow over here, shadow over here. Okay, this is looking really nice. I think this last color works well. So here again, I want to be careful. No shadow over here, just down below. So down, below, and up. A little heavy, I think, so I'm going to very carefully push this straight down, lightly. And I'm going to do this one again. And it can be skinnier than the others, because really these are taller. When I get to these little ones, I'm going to make them smaller, I think. Okay, so the big ones all about the same size. These could be taller, they could be sticking out more, but the longer your shadow is implying that this is taller or shorter, right? Here's one I can get, and I'll try to make it skinnier. I don't have a smaller brush, so I'll just try to be real gentle and not turn it as much. Or you can actually paint into some of the circle because it has the same color on it. So that's a tip for you. When you're doing a small circle, if you want to paint, I've done all my small circles. Here's one. If you want to paint right on the circle and then over a little bit, you'll get a smaller shadow down here. This one's a little different angle. My angle could have been better here. Okay, but look at the depth now. Okay, but you have to be able to see through this. I might even go over this one more time. Okay, let's see. Do I have any more big ones to do? I don't think so. This one could be a slightly different angle. Okay, the little ones will be trickier because this brush is really too big to do the little ones. You might need a pointed brush like this, and you might need to start with the point, go down and around and up. Painting some of it on the circle, because the circle already has this paint. You will not see that you've covered the circle because it's already covered. So let me try these little circles and see how it works for me. Now I've just gotten a little bit on the tip, a little bit. Okay, I've been working at this for an hour and a half now. So you know you're going to be taking at least 3 hours to do this, is my guess. So very carefully, I'm going to paint on this circle a little bit. That's okay. I'm going to go down and around and up. So you can see the little tiny shadow there. Okay, it's kind of exciting when it works. It looks really good. Okay. So I'm going to do this. You can see this, I have a big piece of spatter here. So this looks kind of funny, but I'll get my shadow on and it'll be a little rounder. So it's got to get fat down here and skinny to the side. And now I have a nice shadow on this. Okay. We're going to make these shadows pop even just a little bit more here shortly. Okay, again, I'm painting a little bit on the circle and a little bit off the circle, but not to the left or right, just below it at this angle that we've created. And it's going to go around in here. It kind of got into this shadow, so I'm going to go over that shadow one more time, just gently. That'll dry a little thinner, I hope. Well, I can do this. There. Okay. So now I have all these little tiny shadows to do. Okay. You can really see the depth now because you have a difference between your spatter and your shadow. Okay, this one is going to go to the side here and back. Very gentle. I'm kind of getting paint on myself because not all this is dry. Okay, I'm on the circle, go down below it and up. Might even go a little bit more below it to make that look a little taller. I went to the side here a little too much. I don't like that. So I'm going to take that off. I need to come right off that edge. There, that's better. Right off the edge of that. And now look, this is how it works, ladies and gentlemen. We've got a nice highlight. We've got color washes showing shape. We have a shadow, and you can see the mortar. I'll give you a close-up look of that. So that's what you're looking for, right? We have the highlight, we have the dark color wash, we have the shadow that's cast, and you can see some of the clear mortar, and it gives it dimension and depth. Again, they're simple steps. Don't overthink it and take your time. This one I'm going to make really long. I'll show you how. I'm going to go short, I'm going to get longer, and I'm going to get longer. Now the one thing this is missing, it doesn't have much of a highlight. Let me take some of that off. I think I want to come off the edge of this a little straighter. So when I do that, it just makes this look a little taller. What I can add here is a little bit of a highlight on this edge, and it'll pop off the page more. So I'm going to do this one too. Try to do a trick here. This one's going to have a shadow, but then it's going to go up onto this, which is a different shape. So hopefully this will look like the shadow runs into that circle, up the side of the circle. Shadow, but then it hits this, and this gives it the shape of this circle here. It's okay, I'm going to soften it. I think it's a little dark. But that gives you the idea that its shadow is on this circle. Okay, I've got a few more to do here. Shadow, I'm going to gotta get it close in though. Make it go out a little further. Another little shadow. I'm making these little ones look taller than the bigger ones. If I made the bigger ones seem a lot taller, the shadows would come way out here, and that would get very complicated on these other circles. For instance, this really would be a slightly different shape on this edge. I'm going to leave it like it is because we can understand what that looks like. So look at this, ladies and gentlemen. It's all dimensional now because of these small washes of shadows that we put on. Okay, I'm going to do a little detail here and there. And I might even do I don't know if I'll do a hard edge or not. No, I think these edges are looking good. If you weren't happy with an edge, like maybe down here, you could go in and put another layer of the wash right on the edge to make that look very, very, very dark. Very dark. And that will dry a little softer than that, right? Because it is a wash. And that'll give a really nice contrast between the dark edge and the shadow. This will really make your project stand out. If you get these these edges here a shade darker, right where the shadow is, just where the shadow is, right? A shade darker. Just a shade darker. And you can soften that. That'll dry softer because right now it's wet, right? You don't need too much darkening up. They're pretty dark to begin with. If you go right to that edge and fix your circle up a little bit, that could help the overall look. Okay, even here might help me. On these little ones could help. Just a little darker. You shouldn't really see a line so much. It's just a change from really dark color to the shadow. So you're creating a cut shadow by making these far edges darker. I think here I've got more light color. It looks a little weird. It doesn't look bad. It looks almost like it's coming out of the ground, actually, like there's some light catching it from a different source. So I might cover some of that and let some of it show just to see what I get. Covered some of that. So let that dry. It will dry a little differently. Okay, and then some really nice small touch-ups you can do to make some of this pop even more. Let me see if I find my color. Okay, here we go. So I have a little white. I think I'm going to get a real tiny brush. You can have your rag ready too, because you might put some of this where you don't want it. So I have some white here. It's just a little bit of white. Okay. So we're looking at this dot here. Has a very nice shadow. This shadow covers it. And then it has its own shadow right in here. You can see a little bit of a highlight happening. But if we add the smallest amount of white very carefully, we can give it a little bit more dimension. And you're just creating a smallest amount of texture here. And if I don't like it, I'm going to wipe it off. It's okay. I'm just going to soften it. It's almost little dots that I've put on. But like that would be too much, right? Like I put too much on there, so I can take some of that off. You just want the smallest little detail here. Kind of going with the shape. And we got a little highlight there. I'm going to leave that because I think that's okay. There's another one over here that I can try to touch. I'm trying to just texture the paper a little bit. That's okay. I think I might soften this with my rag. I'm looking in the monitor too. There, a little tiny touch. This one already has one. This is because I let the white show. Even here, it's because the white has shown. There's no real shadow here to show a really good difference. But what I can do here to make this stronger is go in and get some of that wash, the same wash I've been using for the shadows and for the dark wash, and very carefully, a very small line on the outside of this circle, which I think I've kind of missed. Very small line. Thin wash again. Maybe even more. I've got a double circle. That's why I'm having trouble. My circle's not exactly straight. So let me try this. Maybe improve it just a little bit. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Maybe I'm making it look funny. I think I'm just kind of making it look funny because my circle is so strong there. So there, I'm just going to leave it like that, I think. Even over here is a little hot. I think I can take that down a little bit and get up against this edge again. And maybe bring this edge out. So just some little touch-ups. But it's these shadows that are going to make things work for you. Might even go here, try to hit a little bit of that. And we'll highlight, there may be a piece over here gets highlighted. It's okay, I think. This one, nah, don't like that. I'm going to leave that one like that. But you can see now we have dimension to this piece. Okay? We can add in some highlights if we'd like. Some more there. You kind of got to stand back and look at it. I'm looking at it in the computer monitor from time to time, so I can kind of see the whole picture instead of being a little blurry in front of me. Okay. See how that looks dimensional when you have it at the angle on the camera. So I am at 1 hour and 43 minutes. Of course, I've been doing all my talking and instruction, and I can work quickly in general. So this is your finished piece should look very similar to this, keeping in mind the direction of your light. These shadows will probably be the newest thing. You might practice those by drawing some circles on another piece of acrylic paper and practicing just painting the shadows. Just painting these shadows, and then you will understand how they work, because they can't be to the left or to the right. They have to be skinny, wider, skinny. And you will end up painting over these little circles, maybe completely over a little circle. That's okay. And you can see how this little guy out here standing on its own still has his own little shadow. And this little one has its own shadow. This one's covered by a shadow a little bit, but has its own shadow. I think I might make his shadow maybe a little stronger. Let me see here. Maybe a little bigger. Yeah, I think I like that. That reads a little bit more. There's something funny going on here. Here I've got some kind of white going on there. I will take a photograph of this that might read better than the camera and post it to the video as well. But this is what you're looking at. This is what this secondary project will look like. Okay, you kind of have your stone, kind of round stones stuck in the cement. with this secondary shadow here. That's quite nice, and highlights on each side, different size stones. So good luck with it. It's an hour 45 since I began, so you need to gauge that. I think it'll take you at least twice as long as it took me, especially if you let it dry more, which you need to do. You need to make sure this is very dry between coats. So enjoy, and I look forward to seeing all your finished projects. If they look as nice as the brick, I think I'll be looking at some really nice projects because the brick ones turned out really well. Take your time and be patient.